Well, here we are. Heidi ho, everyone. Looks like we got a nice crowd in. Anytime now, we'll be live in YouTube. There's a lag of Lord knows how long it is. A couple of minute lag between broadcasting and it getting over to YouTube. Still not live. It's really strange. And I have to wait because I can't turn the volume off until it comes up. Lord, that's amazing. It takes forever. In the meantime, everybody who's chatting, oh, I'm live. I'm live with Silver Creek. I'm not live with me yet. Lord, will it ever? It still isn't live. That's strange. Well, maybe I'll just not worry about it. Maybe it won't go live. Strange. Silver Creek. Hello, hello. I sent you a notice a little while ago. We're going to try to get Silver Creek on here next week. We got Phillipsfishworks on today. And basically, what I'm trying to do is interview some new people, new fish keepers who are setting up small businesses, which is just a really exciting thing to do. John Heaton has just ordered a bag of bugs from Phillips. Yes, what do I think about hydras? Zamboni Keller wants to know what I think about hydras. I try not to think about them. What in the world? Live in 27 minutes. What? What in the world? Live in 27 minutes. May 26th at 6 p.m. I don't know what's going on. And I don't even know if I can find out. Something very odd. Let's see. Let me open up another YouTube screen and see. I'm live there. Uh, huh. Live now. Huh. Okay. Well, okay. I think I got it. That was most peculiar. Okay, we're good. I didn't have the screen open. That's, I don't know. Things get too confusing and I'm not technical enough to figure it all out. The new look. Somebody said the new look. Yeah, I made the mistake last week of going into a barber. I walked in and I said, "Clean me up." And this is what I get for my trouble. So I think what I'm going to do though is I'm my brother uses an electric uh, what are they called, electric razor on his beard, and it's close cut. I may do that a bit, but I think I'm gonna do away with it. Um, just because I need a change, I think. Let's see. John Zamboni Killer wants to know what I think about hydras. I try not to think about hydras. Actually, I have only had hydras one time, and that was when I was feeding baby brine shrimp to, I believe, baby bettas. And that's when you get hydra, when you're feeding live, tiny live food, live macroculture to baby fish, because the baby fish can't eat the hydra, nor can the macroculture, and they just sit there and plump up. Um, but if you have hydra in a tank with a fish as big as a guppy or as little as a guppy, it'll eat the hydra. So you don't have hydra so much. Here, Hiraki is waiting for my discus care. Yeah, I am too, actually. I'm trying to get up to Delaware to interview super cichlids. They have built a massive discus farm. They are new owners of the Stendecker discus strain, all of which have been shipped to them. So they've got them. They've got thousands of 10-inch discus. It's astounding. And are building about a 5,000 square foot operation to be able to raise them. So they're in for a dollar, and are totally panicked by it because they've never done anything like that before. But they have a wonderful shop, and I'm sure they're it's just one of those opportunities that comes along, and you either decide yes or no. And if you decide yes, it changes your life, but it also puts you on a totally different plane. So that's what they've done. And they will probably become, because they're very serious people and hardworking people and smart people, they will figure out how to make it work and become probably the largest high quality discus source in this country. So that'll be exciting. Anyway, I'm planning to get up there and interview them and talk with them about the farm and acquire some discus and set them up in one of my 29-gallon tanks as a deep substrate, no water changes discus tank. So that's going to happen. The other thing that's going to happen is I'm going to do a natural saltwater tank based on the flora and fauna of Assateague, Virginia, Assateague, Maryland, the federal Assateague Park, and others. I'll have certainly a pair of clowns in there, but there will be local things as well. So those are in the works, and they will both happen this summer. Meanwhile, I'll tell you what. Let me introduce to you Tony Phillips. Here's Tony.
Hello, hello, hello.
Nice to see you. Good to
Yes,
have
thank
you
you.
with us.
Thank you very much. Yes, I'm very excited to be here, and I want to give you a huge thanks for having the platform. I think a lot of people underestimate the amount of effort and energy your videos take, and just the longevity of all of it really speaks volumes.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we have now plateaued. We
Yes,
just
yes,
went
yes.
through about a 5 month growth spurt
Hmm.
that brought us from 10,000 subscribers to 40,000,
Right.
which is pretty substantial.
Very quick time.
Well, yeah, 5 months. We did it in 5 months.
Hmm.
But it's plateauing now. So the plateau will probably run through the summer. Our goal, the beginning of the year, was to hit 100,000 the end of the year.
Hmm.
We may yet do that. It's impossible to know. We are not at this point growing at the rate we have been. It's, as I said, it's plateaued, but we plateaued higher than we were before.
Right.
So
Absolutely. Yes.
each time we do this, we wind up on a higher level, and
Right. Right.
so that's where we're at now, and we're excited. It's fun. We're making a little money for the first time,
Right.
both on YouTube as well as through our plant sales. And that's kind of what got me excited about you, because you're doing things that are that link directly into what we're teaching, which is the creation of a food web. Excuse me,
Yes.
a food web.
Food web. Yes,
Right.
absolutely. So, and that was one of the topics I actually had written down was the food web. Because I feel like when we talk and people get excited about the food web, it's the most exciting or the big point to them is the fact that it feeds your fish. So that's their whole motivation. But really, that's kind of almost the side effect or the result because of its existence. The real role of this big group of organisms, mostly microscopic, the biggest role is breaking down those dead, decaying organic material, returning it back into a material that plants and other smaller organisms can bring back up. So as something dies, whether it's a leaf litter, snail, fish, whatever it is, if you have that big army of diverse group of microfauna and macrofauna, it's going to start attacking it, breaking it down quicker. And, as it basically is going through multiple digestive tracts, and it gets smaller and smaller and smaller until the nutrients are so broken down, plants can directly uptake them. With relationship to other things, those roots are in relationship with fungus and bacteria, and all of it, it's a holistic system. All of it together is what returns a leaf or a dead fish back to earth. Or how does it come? It comes with that food web, and due to the fact that all these organisms exist, that feeds the fish as well.
Right.
So that's one thing. I mean, we hear a lot, and that's the food web's big talk right now, which is great. But it's really breaking down the organic material. And if you have a fish die in your tank and it totally crashes your tank, well, that was because you didn't have a big enough group of something to break it down quick enough to where it doesn't affect the water quality, basically.
Yep. Yep. That's right. And that's the difficulty with things like treating your tank with any kind
Yes.
of antiseptic or toxin. Most medications are by their nature toxic.
Yeah.
They function by killing something.
Mm-hmm.
The goal is for it to be sufficiently targeted to kill only certain things, but there
Right.
are always guests in the house
Yeah.
that get wiped out in the process. It's more like a bomb than
Yep.
it is a
Yep.
bullet. When you
Eh,
put a chemical in a tank, you're really setting off a bomb
right.
in the
And
tank.
and you don't really know the relationships you're destroying. So
Well, that's right.
if you've got, I don't know, couple thousand different organisms in there, mostly all microscopic, and you wipe half of them out, you don't really understand the relationships of all those organisms and how they work together to again return everything back to the earth or break down those dead organisms, whether
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
um, plants or a dead fish or snail.
Johnny Trone, thank you for the 4.99 super sticker. And here's Lisette Burgos with $1.99 and a little note that says, "I love you, Father Fish." Well, I love you too, Lisette.
What's not to love?
Absolutely. Really, really. That is so sweet. Lee Wilcox is here. Hey, Lee. Happy to see you. Jimmy P. Jimmy P said, "I just want to make $1,000 so I can pay my bills." Well, I know the feeling, Jimmy P, and you've been working at this for a little while. It just hasn't clicked yet, but it will. Just hang in there and keep trying. I know we all go through this.
Right.
We all go through the trying to figure out what's going to work. And if we keep at it, eventually something works.
Right.
For me, it was packages of plants. once I started doing a package, which I did not want to do. I had to be dragged into it. But once I started doing it, it just became the cornerstone of a very nice little business. And I've now added to that and I'm continuing to add it to it. So tell us a little bit, Tony, of why is your name gone? Mine is,
Oh,
I don't know, doesn't
hmm,
matter.
okay.
Tell us a little bit about how you got this started and what specifically it is you're doing. We see all those barrels before. Let's
Here, we'll come
explain
this
what
way.
all this is.
All right. So this is, where's the computer? I call it, originally it was BB1 or Blue Barrel System 1. It started out, I am actually in my dad's business right now. This is his part of his warehouse. He runs a vintage Volkswagen parts store, and I'm lucky enough to get one room here. Now, I was limited floor space, but I had lots of height, so I chose to go up. But what I'm doing is primarily it started out, the goal was to breed lots of fish, wholesale them to local fish stores, that kind of a thing. And as we were moving on, I mean, I had some success with the fish, and I have I do some wholesale to local pet stores or places like that. But I've always been very fascinated with the microscopic. I think my first microscope was 12 years old. We lived out on like a miniature farm. I had a creek. I'm out literally 12 years old, Christmas morning, got my microscope, where digging in mud out in the creek through the ice. And I'm, even at that temperature, seeing little organisms. And this was a kid's microscope. And I immediately was not totally satisfied with that because I knew, this is a toy. So by next year, I had begged and begged, and I got the real microscope. So it was, I think,
Well,
a couple $100 off eBay, and this really changed my life. I think I might have been 12.
at a great age.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm fascinated. Growing pond scum down in the basement. I had like my little electronics lab going, and we had animals, farm animals. Fast forward to more recent, I was in the saltwater a while. Then I got into breeding poison dart frogs in this actual very room for a couple of years. Then I went into bees, and now I've landed back into fish. So about 2 years ago, we set up the prototype, which is this barrel system. And basically, let me get out of the way here. The bottom row are full 55-gallon drums, and on top, you've got 3 rows, and that little rolling staircase is how I get around. It's actually very easy to work them. It's not a pain like you might think. But the top water comes into the top row of barrels, and then it drains down. Each barrel drains down into the bottom one below it, then below it. Then once it gets to the bottom row, the 55-gallon drums, they all drain back to kind of a central sump, which is over on this side. Now, this side's kind of a work in progress. It's not done. All that shelving will eventually be more barrels. And that tower there is it was going to be like a trickle tower filter, but I never finished it. I think now I'm going to go with kind of an algae scrubber. But the bottom 2 barrels on the right, that's actually where all the water comes back in. But each barrel at this point, they've gone through many phases. When I was breeding fish, each barrel had a fry cage. I don't know. I know some of you are familiar with Goliad Farms. He's got a pretty nice setup where he has a fry cage in the middle. Then the babies are able to escape into that fry cage. The fry cages are actually all up there because I took them out, but that's what those black cages are. But at this point, what's in each barrel is netted pots in the bottom with seashells and lava rock, botanicals like the leaf litter and the seed pods. That provides cover for the fry, but it also provides cover for the microfauna. So everything is cultured together. There's really no, I do have quite a few tanks without fish, but for the most part, if you give the microfauna the cover, they'll grow in substantial populations, even with fish in there. In fact, I feel like the fish are really part of the food web as well. So the fish are kind of the first level. If they're eating the fish food, their waste is a more broken down version of that food. If a scud were to eat that piece of food, The fish waste is a little more available nutrition-wise to them. If an animal, side note, if the animal is producing waste, it's really only waste to it. So when something poops, basically, we call it waste. It's waste to that animal, but it's still full of nutrients and material that other animals, it's more like a treasure or a food source for other, especially when you get into the microscopic animals. So now
That's what the web means.
exactly. It's all intrinsically connected. It's very much like a superorganism. This idea that, we have all these separate things living together implies that they are separate, but really they're not separatable, if that's a word. You cannot remove them from each other and have long-term success at all. So, when they say, and that expands far beyond the barrel or your glass box, it is all of life is that way. So, your effect, the sun's coming in, the air, oxygen's coming in. It's not just a little tiny ecosystem in a box. It is part of the greater ecosystem as well. But that gets a little deep. But what I offer for sale is basically a slice of this. So everything is, my goal is to provide something and do it on a commercial level, but natural as possible. So when you order, like if you were to go on the website and get a bag of bugs, so this is part of that bag. This is a leaf litter and some hornwort. The leaf litter's been in the system for anywhere a couple weeks is kind of the goal at least. So it's got some organisms colonizing it, organisms growing on it. It's got a kickstart. You also get some seed pods. They are shipped separately because they kind of wreak havoc in shipping. I've had the seed pods rip the hornwort apart. A long time ago, we had some shrimp involved, and they just did not all ship well together. And then you're also going to get a little floating plant. So it's really not just a monoculture of scuds, for example. It is it's a slice of the whole system. It's the microfauna plus their habitat, which is important because this is not only housing for the scuds. Scuds love these seed pods. It's a refuge, a place they can escape and hide in, but it's also their food. So, and you'll see the debris is what I want to show you. So in one of these bags, this is a bag of, on the website, they're called scud balls. And what it is a seed pod loaded with scuds and other microfauna. But if you can see the debris is what I want to show you. So you might think, I don't want to put that in my tank, but really that's bits of broken down leaf litter. The little tiniest specks are the scud waste, which is broken down seed pod itself. That's, if you look under the microscope where you find all these tiny little creatures that are involved in the food web, they're going to be found in that waste material. Again, only waste to the scud, valuable nutrition for other smaller organisms, and then later on down the line, the roots take it up. So it's important to put it all in there. It's important to change your mind of what dirt is and what waste is and what is soil. This soil that's in the bottom of our aquarium or soil in general outside is death. It is literally all the decayed, broken down, once living organisms, whether that's plant or animal. And soil is death. And where does life come from? From the soil. Where do you put a seed? You put it into the ground, you put it into darkness, you put it into death, and out comes life. So it's that holistic whole. It's a circle, it's a cycle. That's the whole point, and that's the connected part. You've got to get the whole system. If you want a whole balanced system, you have to have all aspects of it. You can't pick and choose what you want and act like all those millions or billions of years of coming to this point didn't matter. I mean, they're part, the fish come out of that system. They are part of the system. They are just as much part of it. And the little creatures need the fish as much as the fish need the little creatures.
Right. I assume you're bare bottom in your barrels.
For the most part, with very few exceptions. And they were bare bottom from the get-go because early on, before I had the barrels and I was breeding fish in my living room long time ago. I think I had 30 aquariums we had this in our dining room. My wife was about fed up, but she was very supportive. I know many can relate to that story, but we had all these aquariums, and I had some gravel and lots of plants, and it made capturing the babies very difficult. So they're mostly bare bottom, and that was the whole point of the baskets. So, man, I should have grabbed some of those. You see at the end of this 55 right here, let me see. Those right there, my fingers, those are stacked. They're like plant pots, but they're net pots. So they have holes in the side of them. They're for aquaponics. But I can put gravel or botanicals or any kind of media in there and have those in there for habitat. And then if I need to remove 100 swordtails or something, which would be a nightmare in there, I can just remove all those very easily, set them in a container so they stay wet, scoop out what I need, and then put back. Now
you're running this as a central system.
Yes, everything's connected with the exception of all the half barrels. These 4 right here, they're brand new in the system, so they're not actually hooked up yet, but they will be. In fact, I just finished that last night. And then there's 4, those 4 there that don't have a light on them. Those are also not hooked up, but everything else is all one system. It's almost 1,000 gallons. Once the rest of these barrels are hooked up, it'll be a little over 1,000. And then on the other side of the room, I'll pan over there. The bottom row is started, and there is water in there, but they are not hooked up yet. So that's going to be, and all that shelving will come down. That's just storage for now.
Now, show us your sumps.
Okay, so I don't know how far I can go with the webcam is the problem. So, because I am on a cord. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to get very far, but
that's pretty good.
Basically, the far right barrel, you see that 2-inch PVC pipe on the back wall? That's actually coming from the blue barrel. So that's the drain. Let me sit back down before I have a disaster. Okay, so that 2-inch PVC pipe along the back wall, that's the drain coming from all those barrels. And then the, I think it's 3/4 PVC pipe along the top, that white one, is the line that feeds all the barrels. So they're being fed from the top. And I need to really make a video on my channel that's more in-depth explanation of the system. Yeah. And actually, this was a prototype in another part of the building, the welding shop of all places. Temporarily, we had to hold off on welding. It was over there for about 6 months. It was about, I think, 8 barrels total. It was kind of a trial. And in that trial process, I learned a tremendous amount about flow rates, about what size piping you need to do, how to move water, how if your inlet line is too small, you can only...
You want to move into the screen. You're on this. There you go.
There we go.
That's good.
So, yeah, so it's been a tremendous learning project or process. It's very much an experiment, a work in progress. The main thing I want to get across, or my mission in all of this, is to produce something that's valuable to people, something where if someone's going to spend their money with me, I want them to feel like I got more than I expected, or this was actually worth my hard-earned money, because I know as well as everyone else how valuable, your time is and your energy. So if you're going to give me $20, you need to feel like you got something for it.
Right.
And through all of that, keep it natural. And I want to share along that lines where I really learned this whole natural approach, and the importance of the ecosystem actually goes back to my beekeeping days. And this will be a real quick story, but a beehive, just like an aquarium, is actually a box, but it is made up of thousands of organisms. So in a beehive, there might be, I think it's 4,000 plus documented organisms, most of them microscopic, and they all work together, not because they're hand in hand. It's more like the fact that of how they operate together creates this little ecosystem in there that in turn creates a healthy beehive. And just like aquariums, these beekeepers are dumping in chemicals like antibiotics, antifungus, all these different chemicals to manage pests. And in that process, they're wiping out huge amounts of microorganisms, killing relationships that they don't understand themselves. No one does. I mean, even if you look at these creatures under a microscope, like in your aquarium, you might see one or two creatures interacting and form an idea in your head of what they're doing, but you really can't see the whole picture because the human mind, I don't really think, can wrap around the relationship of pests and predators and prey. And, you know, we think we know and we've got it figured out.
Well, the bacteria, the fungus, the
yes,
archaea are major kingdoms that provide the foundation for all of these, and none of them are visible.
absolutely. Right. The most important thing going on, we can't even see. And all we see is the big flashy thing moving around. And we think we can take the fish or the big flashy thing moving around and move it around as if it doesn't need all the things that go with keeping that animal successful. And that's not to say there are not issues in nature. There may be a parasite or bacteria move into a natural system in the wild and wipe out a whole species of fish. That does happen, but it's all part of that greater balance in the greater life. So
Yeah,
it's
more commonly, it's not that some foreign bacteria moves into a new environment. The reality is these bacteria have been around for 1 billion years.
yeah,
They have cultivated every environment on Earth.
right. They're already
The
there.
difficulty is not something new moving in. The difficulty is something that is already there being destroyed and
Perfect.
creating an imbalance that allows other things to take over and dominate. That's what happens
Yes.
in a fish tank.
I love that. Yeah.
In a fish tank, because you're using toxins, because you're killing things as a matter of course, you're creating an environment in which extraordinary life forms can become dominant.
Yeah.
And beyond that, you're creating an environment in which the the types of bacteria, for example, can emerge and become foreign even to themselves.
Yeah.
They can be triggered to generate in a hostile environment in such a way as to become a major killer.
Yeah.
That's how all these exotic diseases
Right.
that we get in fish tanks occur that never occur in nature.
Right. Yeah.
I want to say that again.
Yeah.
It's really important to understand this. All of these exotic diseases that we experience in our fish tank do not exist in nature as significant issues. They exist in what I refer to as the toilet discipline of fish keeping,
Yeah.
which is to say, you're scrubbing, you're flushing, and you're sterilizing.
Yep.
You're cleaning everything out, you're flushing it away, and then you're putting a toxin in there to keep it so called clean.
Yeah.
What that does is creates a completely foreign environment in which natural processes and natural animals cannot survive. So only the most extraordinary things will begin to occur. And those have the effect of breaking down the rest of the living material, which includes the fish
Right.
that are in the tank. Hole in head, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Hole in head is never seen in nature. It doesn't exist. It exists only in foul fish tanks that have had so many toxins put in them that they have killed off all of the competition for the few exotic bacteria that are able to attack that fish at its lateral line.
Right.
So the whole issue is to maintain a natural balance. Now, how do you achieve that? It's really very simple. That's exactly what Tony is doing. He has a natural balance. Where does your starter culture come from?
Many places. So it's kind of an
And
accumulation.
how often do you
Introduced.
reinoculate? Yeah.
Uh, it's always changing. So I've got the barrel system, which is all the blue barrels. That's all one kind of system that is roughly, like I said, about 1,000 gallons. Over there, which again, I'll get some better videos, but on this rack, there's a 55, there's about 620 longs, there's 320 highs, I think about 10 or 15 10-gallon, just 10-gallon tanks. And those are all kind of independent little systems. A few of them are connected, like that row on the bottom there. And I just moved a bunch, so it doesn't even have lights on it yet. That's what was in place of these blue barrels up top. But these are all separate little systems for the most part. I think 3 of the 20 longs are connected. But those are, again, a lot of little experimental tanks. I do occasionally, well, we'll rewind. In the beginning, I had several samples from different places. I had a big order from Goliad Farms. I know a lot of you guys have to have know about Goliad Charles in Goliad, Texas. Get a lot of horn work from him initially. Got a lot of scuds from him, and with that, I accumulated a lot of his kind of mold material. I had him include some of that in the bag, so a little bit of his. And I do a lot of observation and quarantine. So having a big system that's made of lots of separate barrels, you do in a sense have to be careful, only because I'm distributing this to other people. So I want to kind of know what's going on some level of what's in there. That's why that's important. If you've got a tank at home and you're wanting to introduce something into it, it's a little less of a risk. And I say risk with quotes because, again, it's Mother Nature doing her thing. So I'm not too concerned. I don't have a specific expectation when I'm setting up an experiment of how it's going to go. But if I'm going to bring in a wild sample, I look at it in an aquarium for a long, long time, because I just want to see what's going on. Because the reality is, I think one time I brought in some wild plants and I ended up getting some leeches on a fish, literally all of a sudden, and it turned into this big nightmare. And my only saving grace was, wow, glad that's not in the barrel system. Again, that's a pretty easy thing to deal with. You're just picking them off and eventually it's all gone, but that was isolated to one tank. So it is important to maybe introduce some things as you go along, because again, if you've got a closed system and you're feeding it or however you're managing your system, those organisms are the populations of scuds and copepods and seed shrimp. All that's kind of going up and down and balancing, and sometimes one creature will kind of get the upper hand, competition over food or something, and you've got to be changing it up, or you've got to mix things up to keep one from being ultimately dominating the field. So that's one reason to have all the separate tanks as well. Is I notice in the separate tanks, certain ones, scuds are doing really well. This one, seed shrimp are just crazy busy. This one had an outbreak, Hydra. And I wanted to chime in. I heard you talking about Hydra. Someone asked about Hydra in their tank. Because I've had a lot of tank without fish as well as with fish. So I've observed the fishless tanks. And Hydra is one of those things, kind of in the beginning, it'll come in strong, especially if you have lots of microorganisms, definitely prevalent if you're feeding baby brine shrimp. But if you've just got like a shrimp tank or something like that, and there's lots of little microscopic organisms in there, you can get a little outbreak of Hydra. But if you just watch and don't premature react, you will see, just like most pests, the population goes up, just like YouTube here, goes up and plateaus. Now, YouTube, hopefully the views then go up again, but in this whole pest world, the population of a pest will go up, usually in relation to a food source. The pest population, like snails, blooms in population. Then the snails, there's a zillion of them, so they eat everything up. Now, if you continue feeding heavily and you're feeding too much, those pests will continue to grow and grow. But if you are managing your population, or if you're not feeding much, that population kind of plateaus, then it goes down, just like Hydra, up and then down. So some of these, and I know it's kind of a side tangent, but some of these pest species like Hydra and planaria and snails, they're not really the end all pest, or none of this would exist anyways, because in a system like this, or anyone who's got something bigger than just a couple little tanks that they, something bigger than they can really manage closely, I don't have time to go through and make sure there's no Hydra in my system or no planaria in my system. It exists on some level. The fish are there. The fish eat it. These things are only problems to people really looking at it closely, and usually overfeeding as well. So,
Yeah, that's very good. I wanted to say hello to Peppling Creek. He's been putting out some links. I just put an order in with Peppling Creek. He's got some really wonderful fish, and is another farmer who's doing the same kind of thing that Tony is doing, that I'm doing. Silver Creek, I think we're gonna try to have up next week and show some of the plant farming, aquatic
that'd
plant
be cool.
farming that he's doing. It's really interesting and remarkable. These are all, they're side hustles, but they all have the potential to become significant and substantial.
Absolutely.
And they are a great joy to do. I want to tell you a little story. We're talking about trying to maintain the quality of your flora and fauna there.
Yes.
I collect wild um, leaf litter, leaf mulch. I go out to a local creek that's in a wooded area. I have my net. I scoop out big masses of rotted leaves, bring them back, put them in my tubs, and when I get an odor, I pull a handful out and put it in a bag. That's how it works. That's how I do it. Now, I don't put water in that bag because I don't want it leaking out and wetting everything. But it doesn't need to be wet. It's kept moist. The leaves are kept moist. Anything living on them is not going to die. Or if it does, it won't be a substantial amount of death. In any case, I shipped out some 2 weeks ago, and I got a fellow who sent me a video on the Discord channel on their Father Fish Shoal. And he said, "What is this?" And I thought, well, okay. So I looked at the video, and then I looked again. And he had a 2-inch salamander in there.
Of course.
And I was frankly irritated with myself for missing it, because I've been looking
Right. You wanted it for yourself.
salamanders ever since I started this. And I missed it, and he got it.
No.
Well, God bless him. He decided to donate it to a local nature center. So that was a perfect thing to do with it. It's now in an appropriate environment. It's a spotted salamander, which here is black with white spots.
Cool.
Really, they get big. They get 5 to 6.
Oh, cool.
It's a really quite a nice find. But that is to say, I don't pay attention at all to the whole issue of what's in there now. And the reason I don't is because there are hundreds, if not 1,000 or more, species of leeches,
Yes.
only one or two of which are
Problematic.
plant
Yep.
feeders. The rest of them feed on waste.
Yep.
They actually will go through the mud like a worm.
Yep.
They act just like a worm. They take in a mouthful of mud, they process it and poop it out and keep going. So it's a completely different kind of animal. The other issue is if one does become attached to a fish, you can see it.
Right. Not
It's
really a
real
problem.
visible. It's not like it's microscopic.
Right. And it
They're,
grows.
yeah, and it grows.
Yeah.
They can get half an inch long.
Yeah.
They rarely, if ever, will kill a fish.
Absolutely.
So
Yep.
they're really not
Yeah.
a danger. They are a pest.
It's a
And
fear. It's, yeah.
yeah, but they're easily removed. I think the fear is watching old movies of people coming out of jungle lakes or
Yeah.
jungle ponds with their legs covered in leeches,
Right.
which does happen. I've had it, but again, they're really not
Right.
the only. There's nothing I can think of, frankly, if you're collecting in a healthy body of water.
Yeah.
Now,
Which I
that's
had a,
not to say you should not be careful. You should be careful. I mean, you really don't want to collect behind a garage where they're dumping oil on the
yep.
ground or some kind of paint manufacturer.
Right. I've got oh, sorry. I was going to say I've got a good example. So down the road from us, there's a little park, and it's a little pond. You'll see people fishing there. It's roughly maybe 30 feet across or less. I mean, it's pretty small. And I collected there once because I go out with my jar, I just want to see what's there. And right off the bat, it was way off. I mean, it was the substance was muddy, but not, it was very like sticky and black. And you see signs posted that say that they treat this water for mosquitoes. So any of these little ponds sometimes that are in little recreational areas, a lot of times because they know there's people right there, they're going to dump something in there to control mosquitoes. They're going to dump something in there to control the algae. And under the microscope, which I've got video of it, I'll have to pull it out sometime. The copepods were covered in like little vorticellas or little
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Right.
they look similar to like a little rotifer. They got little cilia and they are attached. This copepod was covered in hundreds of them,
Wow.
and that's like kind of a parasitic situation, except the copepod is just using it as an anchor point. It's filter feeding the water because the water was so full of bacteria and everything because of the when they put a chemical in there, sometimes these mass kills will then be a huge amount of nutrients because all the dead animals, and also depending on the time of year with all the I think it was kind of late fall, so there was a lot of die off of the vegetation, and that would be an example. These leaves, I put it in a jar and I was watching it, and there was also a huge amount. You see planaria out in the wild all over the place, but the highest concentration I'd ever seen, probably in relation to all the death, being such a big food source. But that would be a good example of something you wouldn't then want to dump right in your tank, but something maybe a little more somewhere in a woods that's isolated away from agriculture, away from the road. When you look at a water source,
That's right.
you can get a feel for it if you go out and observe. It's all about the active observation without reacting is mainly the takeaway there.
That's such an important bit of knowledge. We talk about the scientific method as though it were the only way we had to discern truth. But we have other systems as well that discern truth. And one of them is our intuition.
Yes.
Intuition is not the scientific method. It is a completely unique approach to knowledge and to learning that each of us has built into our system. And we use it most commonly with food
Yep.
to determine what's edible and what's not.
Right.
If we're repulsed by something, pretty good chance we should not eat it.
Right.
And that's intuitive. You know, it may be a function of smell or of just a visual signal, but more often than not, it's a combination
Right.
of things that just kind of strikes us a certain way. And that's exactly what and Tony is talking about when you look at a body of water.
Yes.
You're not evaluating it scientifically. You're evaluating it experientially.
Yes.
You're looking at it and you're getting a sense of whether this is healthy. And you
Yep.
need to be able to trust that.
Yep.
You need to be able to trust yourself in the process of determining what's good and what's bad. You know, we've grown up here too, just like everything else in this nature system.
Right.
So we have built into our genetic history all of the experience of our ancestors.
Right.
And we do know more than we think we know.
Yeah.
Trying to reduce everything to rational experience denies a substantial portion of who we are and how we learn.
Absolutely.
The fish tank is such a vital part of that because those people who find themselves maintaining a tank based on test tubes and test strips
Yep.
always wind up in trouble.
And high anxiety and stress.
And yeah, exactly. That's right.
Yeah.
That's
Because
exactly right.
it's not going how they know it's supposed to go.
Right.
Because
It's
they
because
think they know.
they're depending on 2 or 3 or 4 very specific conditions out of the hundreds, if not thousands, of conditions,
Right.
all of which are of equal weight in the balance and health of that system.
Right.
This tank does not operate based solely on its nitrate level
Correct.
or on its ammonia level or on any
Right.
other single chemical test level.
Right.
It operates on the basis of all of them together.
Right.
So when I look at it, the first thing I look at is the clarity of the water. This is not a filtered tank. It has, let me get my camera over to it. In fact, it's got a fair amount of detritus on the bottom. If you'll see, this is week 2 of the new sand. I redid this tank, put new sand in, and you'll see that the mold from the bottom is working up,
Yep.
and the mold from the top is working down. So it's better than a quarter of an inch into the sand now, still sitting on the surface.
Right.
My goal is for that to completely disappear. I don't know that it will, but I want these two to merge. When they merge, then I'll consider the possibility of adding another quarter to half inch of sand. In the meantime, I'm also building up leaf material, and that's what all of this is. That is providing nutrients
Yep.
for the microfauna. Now, it's very rare that I see microfauna in here
Yep.
because I've got fish.
Yep.
Even these little tiny Formosa that eat it as quickly as it makes itself visible. once in a while I'll see a little beetle that'll scoot around, too big for anything to eat.
Right.
There's a baby for probably a Formosa. Probably. I've been waiting to see some baby connect. I can't tell what that is. Yeah, it's a Formosa. It's got stripes on it. Oh, so anyway, that's the whole idea. There's, yeah, I've got some, what are they called? Oh, heck, my brain's gone. Maybe it'll come back. There's another one. Somebody tell me what these are. My 82-year-old brain quit working.
82. I thought you
Yeah.
were 75.
Oh well, I beat
Here's
that one down years ago.
so this tank you're looking in, this is the tank you've carried around with you all this time, right?
Yeah, this has been set up basically for 20 years. Actually,
Wow.
about 22 years.
That's a lot of effort to carry to keep this going. So, and that's kind of what I was saying
Well,
earlier.
actually, it's not. It's
Well, no, I meant, yeah, no, not to
lugging
keep
it
it
around
running.
to keep up.
Yeah, I meant lugging it around. You got to move. You've
Well,
had
it
your,
dropped the water level down to half an inch or so. The Formosas stay in it.
Mhm.
They're fine in a quarter-inch water. What are they called? That's strange that I can't think of that. There's some more back there. Huh. Funny. I just had a brain fart.
Well, you you said
Oh, these,
something.
by the way, these are the plants that I'm selling. Some of them. I don't have any of the big plants. I do have very large plants. I just got an order in of big plants, really big plants, big swords, some of which are 2 to 3 foot tall.
Dang.
Um, and I've got a species of Sagittarius, which is a very rare species that occurs only in certain places in North Carolina, I think,
Mm.
maybe Georgia, but I think North Carolina. That I have had. What is that falling? Must have been a
I
snail.
saw, yeah, it looked like a snail.
Yeah. I got them from a friend of mine who had kept them going in outdoor ponds for years. I've got them going now in all of my other tanks, which I have to tear down because they're glutting the tanks. They look sort of like that. They get about. I've had some with fronds that grow like a jungle val. I've had some with fronds that were 5 to 6 foot long. The average is 2 to 3 foot. Monster plants
Nice.
with big, thick leaves.
Right.
Beautiful plants.
Beautiful.
They're in my vats now. And they've taken over 4 of my tanks, so they're coming out when I get the energy up to do it. And then I'll redo those tanks and some of these really nice plants that I'm getting in. Anyway, I forgot where I was at with all that. The mulm, I think.
Mom, yes.
Yeah.
Well, you did say something that reminded me. You said you very rarely see any of the microfauna, and that's a question I get a fair amount. Is they'll buy something, or even if they already had scuds, if they've got a fish in their system, they'll say, "Well, I just don't seem to see it." If there are fish present, so if you were to start a tank with no fish, introduce scuds or something, copepods, it doesn't take too long to where they're very active in the tank. You can
You'll
look
see
and,
them.
yeah,
That's
I mean,
right.
swimming around. I mean, at any
Yeah.
given point, if you've got a lot of scuds, you could see a dozen scuds, 100 scuds. Put fish in there, and you'll see the fish start eating on them, and within a couple hours, they're gone.
They're gone.
And
Yes.
they hide, and they will hide, and as if you have the cover or the habitat for them, I mean, they will be able to still build a huge population. So I had this 20 long that
Yeah,
was
that's
kind of
right.
a neglected tank that just was off to the side. I had some fish in there. The only cover was there was dirt in the bottom, sand, and then there was like a thin layer of like coarse gravel. and quite a bit of mulm, about as much as mulm as we just looked at. Those fish were never fed ever. I think it was just a couple zebra danios, a couple platies, a 20 long. And I was putting off gutting that tank, but I kept peeking on the fish. They looked fine, so I wasn't worried about it. Finally, took the fish out. I thought, well, there can't be anything left in there as far as scuds, because I never saw any, and they were never fed. And I mean, there were hundreds of scuds. Once I got that out, moved the mulm, I could see in that gravel hundreds of scuds still. So if there's any bit of cover at all, they're just masterminds at hiding, because that's what they have to do in the wild. That's what they're doing.
That's exactly right.
That instinct is to hide.
Here's the thing: if you want to catch them in the wild, go to a body of water that has stones in it.
Yep.
Pick up the stone and flip it over, and you'll see them all over the bottom of it.
Yeah, they kind of like stuck. It's just from like the water tension, they're kind of stuck on it almost, and you can easily get them.
Yeah, they crawl around on.
Yep.
But they stay hidden like that, and you'll see them. I mean, I guarantee you'll see them.
They're everywhere.
Every body of water.
Yep.
Get this now. Understand this. This is really important. Animals like scuds can be found anywhere on Earth where there is water. Anywhere on Earth where there is water. Are they different species? No, not particularly.
Right.
It's the same animal that exists everywhere on Earth. Now, there may be places that are hostile to it.
Yeah.
Hot springs would be hostile.
Yeah.
Alkaline springs might be hostile.
Right.
There are places that would be hostile where you wouldn't find them, but they exist in every single ecosphere on Earth,
100%.
Regardless of the environment. Whether it's the top of a mountain, the body of a riverbed, or a desert, or an ice flow, wherever. And that's true not only of scuds, it's true of virtually every other microfauna and macrofauna. They are universal.
Yes.
So when you start talking to me about invasive species, I just got to laugh at your face. Because there either is no such thing as invasive species, or everything is invasive species. I once asked a biologist with the state of Florida, happened to be a good friend. I said, how do you determine what is a native species in the state of Florida? He said, good question. It is any animal that we can document has been living in this environment for 500 years.
There you go.
That's not very long.
No, not at all.
That means any animal that got here, like, for example, the Cuban gecko,
right,
which has driven out the green gecko, came here by swimming, by attaching itself to flotsam and jetsam, and through storms or weather or whatever, found itself in the Florida Keys and worked its way north. The Cuban tree toad is another one.
Right.
The Cuban tree toad has driven out the green tree frog.
Oh, yep.
It no longer exists in the same environment. I think the whole time I was in South Florida, I saw green tree frogs twice.
Right.
They've been driven out by the Cuban tree frog, which is a noxious frog.
Right.
And by that I mean it's nasty. It contains a toxin which will kill a small dog,
right,
or any other small animal that eats it. if you touch it and touch your lip, it'll make your lip numb.
No.
You can go blind from it
Mm.
if it gets into your eye. It's a nasty animal. Nobody introduced it. It came here
That's
all by
right.
itself. Is it an invasive species?
Right.
Sure it is. But then so is the alligator an
Yeah.
invasive. I mean everything ultimately either is invasive or is not. I mean it's really the issue is not whether an animal can survive in a given environment. The issue is whether by establishing a breeding population, it is supplanting another animal that's already there.
Right.
That's the way we define destructive native
Right.
species. But the reality is, it has as much right, if you will,
Right.
from a global natural standpoint to be in that environment as any other animal does.
Right.
It's to use an old term, it's survival of the fittest.
Absolutely.
You know,
Well,
whatever will survive in an environment is what ostensibly belongs in that environment.
right. And it's all, if you look at the whole world as a system of sorts or a superorganism, it's always changing, always changing, always changing. I was into fossils and paleontology pretty heavy. And here where I'm at in Ohio, south west kind of for the most, well, Dayton, you get a little more. Cincinnati is a little hotter in the fossil world, but it's an exposure of the Ordovician period, which is right around 450 million years, is when we are an ancient seabed. And
Right.
from then to now, there's been lots of change, ice age, all kinds of different things, animals come and go. And I think as humans, we have, or a lot of people have that feeling that, okay, now we're here, we're done changing. No, we are just as actively changing as we have been this whole time. We are just in this little like slowed down snapshot of we call our existence. But if you think for 1 second, there, if we've had 3 ice ages in Ohio, or however many, I could be wrong there, but there's been multiple. When's that come around again? Like, it's cycle, everything's a cycle. And whether that's the population of organisms in your tank growing and shrinking, that there's all kinds of cycles there, or the greater cycles of the natural, and what kind of effect these cycles have on the animals and have on people. If you think that the natural rhythms of the universe and world are not affecting your behaviors, you're naive. If Native American cultures, here in Dayton, we have this nice little place called Sunwatch, and it was this whole little community of I think it's 700 plus years old. It was a campsite that at one point a whole like couple feet of silt just covered the whole thing up in like a flood event, so they were able to dig it up and it was all nicely preserved. But they learned a lot about that society and kind of how it changes. Well, they were very in tune with nature. They had all these poles and different things erected to cast shadows, to tell when certain equinoxes were happening and all this thing. So I think in the modern world, with technology and lights on and off, we have this day-night cycle, but really there are greater rhythms of life in spring, summer, fall, winter, and you can get in those rhythms, but also your aquarium's already in that rhythm. Like my tanks, for example, in the winter, we let the temperature drop a little bit. So in the summer, it might be 78 to 80 degrees in the room. The system usually around 78, or last summer, it typically was balancing around 78. In the winter, it got down to as low as 72 at times. So that drastically changed the behavior of the fish, changed the behavior of the plants, growth of the plants. So instead of trying to force those cycles not to exist and to just have okay, well, we're pumping out this many babies a month and we're going to feed this, just let nature do its cycle, let it do its cycle. And then you'll see, okay, now, wow, man, the last couple months we've been ramping up into spring, and now we're going to be going into summer, temperatures coming up, production's coming up. And it's not I'm doing anything. I mean, I'm working a lot harder, or not harder, but when the stuff's producing, you're doing more. But it's I'm not perpetuating it. It's already in motion. This is already happening. We're observing it. We're labeling it. We're categorizing it, calling it science, but it's already doing it. We're not making it happen. It's already going. That's important
Right.
to keep that in mind, and to
Thank,
not stress so
thank
much.
you, Purge. Yes, pencil fish. That's what they are. They're pencil fish. Thank you. Yeah, I knew somebody would know it. Chris Rosecker said, looks like pencil fish or Siamese algae eater. Yeah. So a couple of you got it. Nice. This really raises very serious questions about issues that that dominate our are dominating our culture, our politics, our economy, having to do with so-called environmental issues. And the same discipline applies. The reality, the reality is that as cultures become economically more stable, as people are raised out of poverty and the economy of the culture is able to support its people at a rising minimal level, that culture tends to take better and better care of its environment.
Yep.
It is the primitive environments, if you will, that are responsible for burning wood as a primary means of creating heat and cooking.
Right.
A perfect example is Haiti. Haiti has been driven into poverty more than once, most recently by the Clinton blockade, which prevented any manufactured items from being able to leave Haiti, thereby crashing their economy literally overnight. As a result, within 1 year, mountain forests were stripped bare of all of their wood for making charcoal in order to be able to cook.
Right. Right.
That would not happen here unless and until we became a completely devastated
Right.
economy. Why in the world we're acting in a way that threatens the stability and the balance of our environment, of our economy, in an effort to somehow prevent us from doing damage to our environment, completely escapes me.
Right.
Our environment is among the healthiest anywhere on earth.
Mm-hmm.
It simply is. It is among the healthiest anywhere on earth, and is getting better.
Right.
And the reality is that the more CO2 we release into the air, the more plant growth occurs, and the greener our environment becomes. So, why would we want to reduce carbon emissions when those very emissions are greening the earth, increasing crops, increasing forestation, providing food for a wider range of animals, the level of insanity threatens to engulf us in its madness. And I won't say any more about that because I could just get torn by it. But it's true. It's utterly true. A fish tank is the salvation of our way of life.
Yeah.
Because it brings us in personal contact with the natural world.
Yes.
In spite of any efforts to keep pulling water out, keep scrubbing it clean, keep throwing chemicals in,
Right.
eventually
It keeps going.
eventually you get tired of killing everything,
Yep.
and you ignore it, and it starts coming to life.
Right.
And then you look at it and you wonder, how did that happen?
Yeah.
And you begin to understand. Nature is dominant.
Yep.
It is all that is dominant.
Yep.
And we do not control it.
Yep.
We may influence it in some relatively minor ways, but we do not control it.
Yep.
It controls us.
Yeah.
And I think it's I'm on it now.
Yeah,
it's,
right. Yep.
It's the hubris of the human mind that wants to say, I am in control.
Yep.
That wreaks havoc.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to pick this up and move it over here, and I'm going to put this over here, and I know what I'm doing. That's the problem.
Yeah.
And you're disrupting relationships that are not able to be fully understood. And what you said reminded me of something. I can't remember now, but you're spot on. The thing about natural aquariums, and what I guess the problem that really occurs if you spend time observing, it's all about the observation without premature reaction. If you really get on board and you start to let go of your judgments about what you are expecting, what starts to happen is you start to see the relation between this. It's a metaphor for everything else that's happening. So if you really get invested in your fish tank and you really and you start to get a sense of that connectedness of all things in your aquarium, you start to think, well, what about out here? And you start to realize there's no inside and outside. It's only the great outside. We have houses built outside, and when we're sitting in our house on the couch watching Netflix, watching Friends on HBO Max or Max now, when you're watching your TV with your honey on the couch, you really you have a sense that you're inside, and you're in this own little world, but you're just in a house that was built. Like, you're still part of that greater community and ecosystem, and it's all in your head about inside and outside. Your whole body is trillions of cells, trillions of reactions and relationships at a chemical microscopic level, none of which you're controlling or really manipulating. It's just happening, just like your aquarium. So that's the danger of really getting into this natural aquarium and really letting go of that expectation of what should be happening. And it forces you, like Father Fish was just alluding to, it forces you to think about other things than just the aquarium experiment in your life. Well, what else is like this? What else is totally out of our control? Is it even like, can you get to the point to where you understand that your own behaviors are almost totally out of your control? This whole, there's not a real difference between what's happening in your aquarium than what's happening outside of your aquarium.
That's right.
That's a little deeper, I think, than a lot of people want to go. But
the notion that somehow you cannot contain a natural system in a fish tank ignores the fact that the fish tank is part of the natural system.
Yeah.
And that's not a theoretical notion.
It's happening right now.
That's a concrete reality. It is every bit as much a part of the natural environment, as is anything else.
Right. It's its own. It's kind of its own branch of that life spreading. And that same thing's happening on the bottom of your shoe when you tracked mud inside your house. Like the organisms are dying and coming to life so quickly. So many of these little microscopic organisms I've learned through this experience, they totally dry up into dry and then come back to life, quote unquote. They weren't dead, but like rotifers totally dry up for a season, and then when the water returns and a pond fills, a pool of water that's not a dedicated pond all the time but fills up every spring with water, can have those aquatic microscopic organisms, and they come and go with the seasons. And that,
they cyst.
yes,
They
exactly.
form a hard shell.
So
That's exactly what a brine shrimp egg
exactly,
is.
yep.
The brown brine shrimp eggs are winter eggs.
Right.
They are not summer eggs. The brine shrimp lays red eggs in the summer. In the fall and winter, they lay eggs that are encapsulated with this hard brown substance that protects the egg from the environment. And then in the spring, as the weather warms up, that dissolves and they are able to hatch out.
Right.
Let's see, somebody.
I see lots of comments. I haven't really been.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's a lot of really cool conversation.
Right, absolutely.
Going on. Oh, here it is. A code named Sway. Can I add food color to a tank with fish in it? I love that. Can I add food color? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You could add food color. It'll last about a day. It's food color.
Something eats it.
It is something that is organic. It is not a toxin. It is not actually a dye.
Right.
It is by virtue of our Food and Drug Administration.
Right. Hopefully.
It is a consumable, and therefore has to meet the requirements of things that can be eaten without causing harm. Now, the question is, can you dye your tank? And you certainly can. The best example of that is tannins. Tannins dye your tank, and it's relatively permanent. I've got some tanks in back of me here that were dyed not with wood or wood product, but with a sand that contained certain minerals that have dyed the water. They've dyed it a brown color, so it looks like tannin. But my suspicion is it's not tannin, it's some mineral that has come in with the sand, because that's all I put in there. So, yeah, you certainly can. You want to be somewhat careful because there are dyes that are toxic. Well, here's a good example of a dye that we use in tanks that changes the color of the water. Guess what? Methylene blue.
Yep.
Malachite green.
Mm-hmm.
Acroflavin, which is yellow. There's a red one. Don't remember what it is. But there are lots of things that will dye the tank. Many of them are toxic. Mm-hmm. So you just want to be careful. Methylene blue will do it. In fact, there's been, I don't know if any of you have followed this, there's been some research just recently with some YouTube experimentation. I call it the blue tongue theory of evolution, in which people are ingesting methylene blue because some research had determined that it improves brain function.
Yikes.
Well, I tried it.
Yeah. Why am I not surprised? Why am I not surprised?
Once.
Yep.
I put a drop of I have, it wasn't a drop. I have a pound
There's a
of
shot.
methylene blue powder, which is enough to turn the ocean blue. I think. I don't know how large a body of water it would work in. Probably one of the Great Lakes. It is. It's a 1 pound container, about that big, of methylene blue powder. I've always thought of it as toxic, so I've never really allowed myself to breathe it in
Right.
or even touch it. I've been very, very ginger
Hmm.
with it. But I put I dipped the tip of a spoon in it, tapped it off, put that in about 6 ounces of water, turned it bright blue.
Yeah.
I sipped it twice, and I thought I noticed an effect, but I decided I really don't want to do it anymore.
Were you feeling
And
genius?
yeah, and then I saw, yeah, I don't need to be, I don't need to be a genius. I'm too smart for my own good.
Right. We can't handle father fish at level
Yeah,
10.
really, really. But then I saw a picture of a guy with his tongue sticking out that was bright blue. So he was deep into it, I guess.
I'll leave it up to you guys. I don't know about that. Mm.
So yeah, lots of things you can dye. They may be good, they may not. Food color you can do. Food color won't hurt anything. You can certainly do that if you're having a party and you want your goldfish to be in pink water. You can certainly do it, or green water, whatever.
Mm.
But it's gonna go away. It won't last more than a day.
Mm. Mm.
All right, Nick Lampert, thank you for the super sticker. Appreciate it very much. Slauzers is here. His Koi Nemo betta is my goldfish. He loves me and isn't scared at all. Lets me touch him and comes close to me while I'm cleaning the glass. I saw a picture once of somebody with a goldfish in a pond, and they were tossing it out into the middle of the pond. It was swimming back to their head in order to be tossed out again. Darndest thing I ever saw. Yeah, the fish are conscious creatures.
Absolutely. Yep.
They are conscious, willful,
Yep.
knowledgeable. They are creatures that live in an environment that they seek to understand and seek to
Yep.
be in harmony with.
Yep. And I would go so far as to say the microfauna on some level, they understand the presence of the fish in the tank as well. They know what's going
Sure
on
do.
somehow.
Yeah, that's right.
Um, absolutely.
Dave BNSF, Nescal. Different plants root. Don't use distilled water ever to root plants.
I think he was answering a question from up above the My Koi Nemo beta. A couple comments up, someone was asking about advice.
Oh yeah, I got it, Natalie.
Yeah.
I like to propagate plant cuttings. They rot and fail in tap water or distilled water in my jars. Perhaps I should add acorn caps or leaves. Well, that's exactly right. They're dying for lack of nutrient. Um, so yeah, if you have nutrients, I had a situation recently came up on Discord. Somebody had created a father fish tank. Now, as is the case with very intelligent people, they decided to fix the father fish system
I did
because it
that.
wasn't working the way it should. You see, so they started out by putting sand all around the edge of the tank, or at least on the front, so that there wouldn't be that visible dirt layer on the front of the glass. They put 2 inches of sand. Now, did they baffle it? No. They simply put 2 inches of sand in. So the sand slipped. It went like that, all the way out to probably a third of the way into the tank, almost to the middle of the tank. They then put dirt in on top of the sand and put 2 inches of sand on top of that, level with the top of the sand they had already put in. So imagine this. I looked at it from the side, and here was dirt within a quarter of an inch from the surface of the sand going like that, going, going straight down. Um, and they were wondering why in the world the dirt was emerging
Right.
through the sand. Well, if you look at this tank, you'll see it happen. You'll see it happen in all of them. That's why we put 2 inches of sand on top of 1 inch of dirt. That is 2 inches of sand
Yep.
on top of 1 inch of dirt, not 2 inches of sand and then some dirt and then some more sand.
Right.
That doesn't work. That doesn't give you 1 inch of dirt and 2 inches of sand. It gives you something else that doesn't work.
Right.
And of course, the guy was killing his plants.
Yep.
He was getting dirt in the water. He was creating havoc. The solution was very simple. Anybody care to take a guess?
Add more sand.
Add an inch of sand.
Yeah.
That's right. Lee, who's with us, we used to do daily daily live streams, and one of the common phrases that came out was "add more sand."
Add more
We
sand.
even rang a bell every time it came up, the sand bell. And Lee made a hat. He covered it in glue and dipped it in sand. He had a sand hat.
That's
So
funny.
he would tip his hat when we added sand.
Mm.
Yeah, you need 2 inches of sand on top of the dirt.
Right.
Any variation from that is going to create problems because the dirt works its way up into the sand, but it only comes up about an inch, not beyond that. And then the detritus, the malm, will precipitate into the sand and it'll go down about an inch and they will meet. And when they do, which takes at least a year, at that point you will have a mature tank.
Right.
In which the roots will then be if it's a large plant like an Amazon sword, the roots will be infiltrating the entire substrate.
Yeah. Those swords love the dirted tanks. Any kind of that, like jungle valve, Alicenaria, they do amazing in dirted tanks.
Do. Yeah. Better even than stem plants.
Yeah. Even I found even something like a guppy grass or hornwort benefit, even though they don't have roots going down, there's some kind of benefit going on with the dirted tanks. If you compare back when I had the 30 tanks in our dining room, I was very much experimental mode, and it was just sand only. It was combinations of dirt, combinations of additives in the dirt. Watched a lot of your videos early on, and I was one of those that had to tinker a little too much, and I loaded up. I made a whole probably 6 or 7 that were way too much, all kinds of crazy organic, like chicken manure, blood meal, just 5 or 6 different fertilizers, all organic, but it was a pressure cooker, and I really fought those. That was a little too extreme.
Yeah, they can blow a tank up. I did that once. I did a video, which I've since taken down because it became a source of too many people screwing up.
Yeah.
In which I was playing the mad scientist. And I did it deliberately. I wanted to see what it would do. And unfortunately, I videoed it and put it out, in which I had all of the ingredients surrounding me, and I was taking hands full and
Yeah.
throwing them in the tank.
I want to say I saw that maybe because I remember I mean I was dumping baking soda, Epsom salt, and it just it was a problem.
Yeah, that tank blew up.
Yeah,
It,
yeah, I
I
had
could,
about
it
6 in
was
a
a,
row.
it was
Yeah,
a 10-gallon tank, and it blew up.
yeah, yeah.
Alex is here. Hey, Alex. Wonderful to see you. Fish story. Welcome to Snook. Oh, okay. Alex has joined the channel as a member. Bravo.
Nice,
Thank you, sir,
nice,
very much. I do
nice.
appreciate it.
So one thing I wanted to touch on, and I wanted your opinion as well, or you to chime in, but I wanted because this is a constant question I get on a weekly basis, sometimes a daily basis, and it's about scuds and shrimp living together. There's a lot of hype out there, a lot of videos, very anti-scud videos, and it to me a lot of it is a lot of exaggeration and secondhand information. So I can only give my personal experience of what I'm doing right now and what I've done the whole time. And when I bought scuds and shrimp to breed, I purchased them together, and every barrel and every tank have kind of that same assortment of scuds and shrimp. So the fear I get from a lot of people, or they'll ask me, so can I have the scuds in with my shrimp, or what's the problem there? And I know even I saw Alex in the chat. He did a scud video and he touched on this some too. But the fear is this, and I watched the videos too, that this female scud is going to have its babies, it's going to molt, it's going to need lots of protein, and that's when I think I heard in one video they're going to massacre 30 shrimplets a night. And realistically, if that was true, then there'd be no shrimp in this system because there are far, I mean, there's millions of scuds at this point in the system. So it's can a scud eat on a shrimplet? Absolutely, that can happen. Does it happen on some level? Maybe, maybe not. Realistically, what's happening with long-term environments is you'll see your shrimp population grow and you'll see your scud population grow. So if you have an expectation of this female shrimp that's got 40 eggs to have 40 shrimplet, that's an expectation you're placing on a living animal that is not even a fair expectation. So can you grow scuds and shrimp together? Absolutely. Again, if you go back to some of the places I've sourced my scuds and shrimp from, Goliad Farms, he's got, I think, 75,000 gallon system between 3 greenhouses. 2 of the greenhouses are connected together. It's all like a recirculating system where the floor is actually the sump. But I mean, there's no separation between scuds and shrimp there, and he's breeding them by the thousands, and the same thing going on here. I put scuds into one barrel, and within a couple months, scuds were in every barrel because they're just so tiny. The pump doesn't affect them. They can go through a pump, no problem. So this fear that there's one particular animal going to be the end all of the other animal is just clickbait, for lack of a better word.
It grows out of the same mentality that we've been discussing.
Absolutely.
Which is to try to somehow maintain the purity of the environment.
Yes.
It's a fool's errand.
Yep.
Because there's no such thing. And the harder you try to do that, the more death and destruction you're going to wreak in the process.
100%. Yeah. So in a barrel or a tank, one of those organisms like the scud or the cherry shrimp may be dominant at any given point. So you may notice, whoa, I mean, this was full of shrimp and now it seems like it's full of scuds and it seems like the shrimp population's down. But then the opposite happens too. I had a 40-gallon, well, this up here, which is kind of needs tore down. It's going to eventually be a display tank. That was just a 40-gallon breeder. There's those net pot baskets I was telling you about. But that at one point was a scud and shrimp tank. And it was going into last winter. I mean, just let me get focused here. um, you could just scuds like crazy, no fish at all. So you could see everything swimming in there. And as winter went on, I don't know, I think it was in combination with dropping temperatures and less feeding, they definitely switched. Those shrimp were far dominant over the scuds. So you'll see those populations rise and fall. I guess the best advice would be don't judge what that really means. You know, if all your shrimp are gone and you notice that, maybe there is an issue going on. So I'm not saying that can't happen, but at large, this fear, scuds are everywhere. They're like we were talking, they're on every continent. They're in the deepest oceans as these giant football-sized scuds. They are in a stream. You can find them anywhere if you have water around. They're there. But um,
Was it just me? Oh, Jeff Kane said shrimp also eat scuds. So it works both ways.
right. So it's and I understand why someone may or may not want scuds, but I get customers wanting. Well, yeah, I get that email. Can you do a culture without scuds? And I don't culture them separately, so I really can't because they are so tiny. I can do everything humanly possible, but the baby scud is so microscopic, and that's why it's so important,
Right.
in my opinion, if you have that population of scuds in your tank where you're breeding fish, um, they're going to be a great food source for the small fish as well.
Right, exactly.
So,
No Young Cricket has an interesting comment about CO2. Noted that plants grew better with the introduction of CO2. I am not opposed to CO2, far from it. I think CO2 is absolutely fundamental to being able to maintain a balanced tank. The deep substrate is a CO2 factory. It creates, through breaking down all of the carbons, it creates far more carbon dioxide. That's what most of the gas bubbles are that you see coming out of the sand. It's CO2. Creates far more CO2 than any mechanical CO2 generator can even possibly create. And it has the added benefit of not screwing with a pH.
right,
So a deep substrate solves the problem of CO2. It creates a balance and a level that is superior. That's one of the reasons you were asking earlier about the effect of deep substrate on floating plants. That would
yeah,
certainly be one. It would be creating large amounts of CO2, which are critical for plants to be able to absorb, um, to be able to do photosynthesis, to be
right,
able to absorb carbons and the like.
right. Someone had asked about scuds eating plants, and in at least in my experience, I was thinking about this early today because that's another question that comes up quite a bit. Scuds will eat anything. Now, their preference is going to be that kind of decaying. They like a lot of leaf litter. They're going to eat a lot of algae. Like they love to eat hair algae. I'm sure they'll eat on blackbeard algae, these other kinds of algae. Any kind of decaying or rotting things they really like. So what happens in tanks sometimes, especially if you have no fish, that population of scuds grow and grow. So if you start out with 100 in a short time, you're going to have 500, and in another short time you'll have 1,000, then 10,000. And when you have an army that big of scuds, because there's nothing consuming them, especially, they can clean a tank up pretty quick. And then once that, everything's fine until that day comes where, oh, everything's gone now. They've destroyed
Right.
all the leaves as far as they can go. There's no more algae, and all that's left are these succulent, delicate plants, which they will start to chew on some level. But again, if there are fish in the system, it really never builds up to that point because those fish, I mean, they keep the numbers down. And you know, scuds, everything's population is going to be dependent on the source of food. So if you're feeding a lot, you're going to not only have more pests, but you're going to have more scuds and you're going to have more everything. And sometimes because you've been overfeeding so long, these pest populations build up. Maybe you don't even notice it, but you have a lot more planaria than you even realize, a lot more snails than you realize. And then when you come on to this message of, hey, feed less, you shut that food right off. And then you have these huge populations of animals all of a sudden with no food source because their population was built on top of the growing food source. Food source goes, before they starve to death, they go into panic mode and they're starting to reach out and consume things they wouldn't normally consume or consume things they weren't consuming before.
I'm glad you brought that up because it raises a really significant issue. When I say stop feeding your fish,
right.
I'm not saying stop putting nutrition in your tank.
Yeah.
I'm saying stop using prepared foods as a way of maintaining the balance of life in your aquarium. Putting leaves in your tank that's nutrition.
It's food. Yeah.
Is food. That's nutrients. So I'm by no means suggesting that you should not put nutrients in your tank. You absolutely must put nutrients in your tank. They should be natural.
Mm-hmm.
They should be either living organisms.
Mm-hmm.
They should be organic material that can be broken down naturally, like leaves.
A dead plant in your tank, if you leave it in there, is now a food source.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Anything dead. Alex raised an interesting question at 7:43. He said, "I still want to know how much carbon the roots pull from non-gas sources in substrate." We're looking. Well, I have a group of researchers on our Discord, our Fatherfish Shoal server, who have a dedicated server as a part of that, who are researching several different areas. The first one is leaves and the effect of leaves, which gets into then the microfauna, the macrofauna, all of the chompers and the food web that's involved with that. So they're actually putting together research papers
Mm-hmm.
that will start to being the most of the research now is done on the leaf module.
Yeah.
That will start then they're beginning to write it up now.
I'm
That
excited.
will begin coming out late in June, early July. The next unit will be on the food web, and then the third unit will be on the deep substrate and all of the minerals and whatnot that father fish sticks in his deep substrate.
Right.
I'm excited about that.
Yes.
I want to know I want to know where I'm off target and where I'm going to be justified.
Right.
Well, all of this is happening now. Alex, I challenge you to come over. I will give you full research capability on the server to be able to share with these people, to talk with them, to be a part of that process. And I want to get Lucas the same opportunity so that we can have the best minds we have contributing to this process. This is not Father Fish's thing.
Right.
This is open, and I want it to be open to anyone who has a contribution that they can make to it that will increase the knowledge and understanding of what we're really all about here.
Yeah.
And if that means I have to change the name, I may well begrudgingly do so.
Well, it comes back to that holistic thing again. You get more than just one brain involved. You're getting other pieces of the pie.
Sure.
I saw a couple comments directed at me, and I just wanted to touch on them. Someone asked about do I need an air stone for scuds? Not particularly. The only real reason for an air stone might be for some water circulation. I've got a lot of jars up on a shelf. There's no water movement, nothing. They have little small populations of scuds in them. If you end up feeding, like you throw a cucumber in a little body of water, having a little air circulation might help solve some problems, but it's not necessary. And then I saw one more asking about a black banana peel. Can I put that? I feed banana peels to my scuds all the time. So they love things like if I cut the green part, the leaves off of strawberries, I always save those. Banana peels, put them in a bag or a cup, leave them sit out for a few days. They can be a little bit slimy, broken down, makes it even easier for them to start that breakdown process. But back to what you were saying, getting them all together. I'm so excited about the book information. I'm excited to learn about the leaves on more of so much of our information in the hobby is very hearsay or secondhand information. It would be nice to get something that's at a level like hobbyist, and we can all kind of digest a little easier. Scientific papers are hard to read for a lot of us, and we don't, the language is a little more difficult for the average hobbyist to really get into and understand. And a book that's geared toward the natural aquarium, talking about different kinds of leaves and benefits of different kinds, that's going to be amazing, because even me personally, I've been using leaves a long time, but I really don't know much about them other than if I've got a leaf, okay, is this being used in the hobby now? And is it safe to put in my aquarium? That's the main things we're looking at, because that's about all we have to really look at. Now, if we had a resource that was, okay, oak leaves are contributing to this, and maple leaf, just a little more information, something to,
what we've already discovered is that you need a variety of
yes.
species.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That simply a catappa leaf is not adequate to be able to provide, number one, the variety of minerals that are needed, and number two, the rate of degradation that's required in order to be able to keep the microfauna alive.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. Because if you don't have a variety in there, then you end up over time, your big variety of microfauna you put in there eventually becomes some kind of monoculture on some level, because
that's right.
lots of the diversity dies out because you're throwing it in your aquarium that really doesn't have the variety of natural materials in it. So you end up only having long-term success with the creatures that are doing well with what you have in your aquarium. Well, if you have a variety of leaves that are breaking down on a variety of timelines and releasing nutrients at a variety of times, you're going to end up with a more complete food web, which again, we talked about, is not just providing food for your fish and other creatures, but breaking down the dead and decaying animals and plants. So if you've got that diverse population, you get a more complete breakdown, if that makes sense.
Right. Slauser said, would you safely drink your aquarium water? Certainly not. Certainly not. I would not do that. I have realized that given a SHTF event where all of the power goes out and the well doesn't work anymore, that I have a source of water that would last a good while. I would want to boil it or treat it before I used it, however, simply as a precaution. That may be nothing more than my own anxiety. But again, I think it's important to trust one's intuition. And my intuition says, I'll taste it and spit it out.
Right.
But I'm not going to drink it.
Right.
On a dare, I probably still would not. If somebody offered me $10,000 to drink it, I'd wonder what was wrong with them.
While drinking the glass.
No, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, I agree with you
And
completely.
and again, it's not a rational thing. It really isn't. It's got nothing to do with the possibility of you know getting what's it guardiola guard whatever it's called the a microbe that what was that? Did you hear that? It sounded like a motor starting. It was strange. Anyway,
You may get that from my side. We are
Guardia.
we're right on 75. Now
Well, it
there's a
could be.
wall. Yeah.
Yeah, it could be. Could have been that.
Yeah, every once in a while
Yeah,
you
that's
get
what
my
it was. Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, it's just an intuitive thing. I just wouldn't do it. I've never done it. Now I've got my hands in water all the time.
Yeah.
In fact, the whole time I was running my store, I never once used soap to wash my hands.
Yep.
I just didn't do it. My hands were always clean.
Yeah.
I never needed to remove dirt from them.
Right.
And I did not want to get soap in the water.
Right. I'll
The
kind of
soap,
rinse them, but I don't soap because if it's
yeah,
going right back in, you get soap under your ring or on a
yeah,
bracelet.
exactly. And
Yeah.
soap kills fish.
Yeah.
It's it plugs up their gills.
Yeah.
Well,
So
we're in pretty good shape here.
yeah,
I wanted to thank you for coming up today.
absolutely. It's been a
This has
pleasure. It's
been
been a pleasure.
fun, Tony.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I've got a lot of ideas. I've got a lot more to come. My YouTube channel is not at all representative of what all is happening. My time frame from I might have 500 hours of videos saved up. It's getting them edited and getting them out.
Really?
That
Well,
that that's a work in progress that I'm getting better at. But
my
um,
my my team wishes I did.
yeah, I
I've
understand
got
that.
1,400 videos, so
That's
they do
incredible.
go back. They do go back and harvest,
Yes, yes, that's
and a
incredible.
lot of that is hour-long live streams.
Yes, yeah,
But the quality is so poor that
yeah,
generally it's not worth trying to say.
right.
Well, thank you again, Tony. Delighted to have you.
Thank
It's
you.
been a
I
scintillating conversation.
absolutely. Hey,
I hope
anytime. Yeah,
everybody's enjoyed it.
absolutely. Yeah, I appreciate your efforts having me on. If anyone's interested, phillipsfishworks.com, phillipsfishworks.com, phillipsfishworks.com.
And your
That's where you
YouTube channel.
YouTube channel, same thing, Phillips Fishworks. There's always a lot of confusion on my name. A lot of guys think I'm Phillips, and I get that, but it's my last name, Phillips. It's kind of a family effort, and we're all
That's
Phillipses.
two L's.
Yeah, two L's. Yeah,
Two
yeah,
L's, right.
yep,
Most of the Phillips are one L.
yep. So it's Tony Phillips. And if you can take anything away from all of this, I have a sincere passion for the animals, and to me, snails and scuds and the microfauna, they're just as important as the fish, and that's kind of where my heart is, and that's what I love seeing, the relationships and development of a system that way. And I appreciate all the support. It's blown me away, and I appreciate everything Father Fish has done, because here I am able to get on a platform and say my piece to a larger audience because of his lifelong effort and what he's doing, which really kind of got me started back on a more of a natural path when I came back into freshwater fish a few years ago. So,
Sunset Jen, hello, hello. Nice to have you here. Thanks everybody for plugging in. It's been a gas. We're at what are we at? We're right at 100 people.
yes,
So it's been a little higher, I expect.
yeah, it's been
Delighted to
great.
be here. Bless you all. Got a new video coming out probably Tuesday on the two tanks you absolutely must have in your fish room. What are they? What are they?
Ooh,
Everybody should know this. You need a quarantine tank,
Yes. Okay. Yeah, I see where you're going.
and you need a hospital tank.
Absolutely. Yes. Yep.
So God bless you all. That video will be posted on Tuesday. Delighted. Bye for now.
Bye.
Love
Thanks,
you all.
guys. It's been fun.